So I recently picked up an iPad Pro, the M1 model. This time, I bought a used one. If you followed this channel for a while, you might know I've had iPads in the past. A lot of my early videos were made with iPads and were about iPad music. And as you may know, I've had a bit of a journey with them. In fact, things got so bad that I sold my iPad in 2021, I believe, maybe 22, and basically decided I wasn't going to use one again. And then I started missing it, as I do. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to try it again, but this time I'm going to have realistic expectations. Because even though it has the M1 processor, which is now a little old, but is still a very powerful processor, Apple has deigned to keep the iPad its own separate, smaller thing. So what I decided to do today is to just dive into GarageBand, Apple's flagship music making app, because they don't have Logic Pro on here still, and just see how is it now. And the reason we're looking at GarageBand is because in my experience, GarageBand is the most stable DAW on iPad. You can absolutely dispute me on that, and I do think there are a few candidates that might be more stable, but they're also more self-contained. So, for example, Core Gadget is extremely stable, but it can only use gadgets. You can run like one of the gadgets to play an inter-app audio plugin in the background, but besides that, Cubasis 2 and 3 I've had non-stop issues with. I really tried to give Cubasis another try off camera, and immediately started seeing this thing where certain clips just wouldn't play the MIDI notes that you'd entered, which I'd seen before. I didn't have the crackling this time, which is good, but it's just, for a $50 app or whatever I paid for it, unacceptable. 2 and 3. 2, whenever I'd hit undo, it would just crash the app. 3 had crackling issues, and then the MIDI notes not triggering. AUM and LK I've made a video about. That was actually a fairly popular video, and to be honest, I had way too many issues with that setup because all of these apps are designed by different people and they're not designed to talk to each other. The standards are not quite at the level they need to be. And I think, again, I've talked about this, but if you're coming from PC music production or Mac music production, the instability of all of this is unacceptable. If you've only ever used an iPad, you're probably like, oh, this is just how it is, but it's not. It doesn't have to be that unstable. So the reason we're looking at GarageBand is because, in my opinion, GarageBand is one of the more stable DAWs. And really, the stability only becomes an issue if you use certain plugins that have stability issues everywhere. That said, there are a lot of really cool synths on iPad. There's a lot of really cool plugins. There's a lot of really cool users and community here. I've been using the iPad a lot to generate sounds for the OP1 field. So I will find different synths or plugins that I like and then sample them into the OP1 field. So it's a really good sound engine. But obviously, the chip in here is super powerful. Even this 256 gig model has 8 gigs of RAM. And I do think this platform is primed in the next year or two to get real DAWs. Something like Ableton, something like a full-blown Machine on here. If I could run Machine with my Native Instruments plugins or the Arturia V collection, Serum, some serious powerful plugins should be able to run on here now. And if they had the right stable DAW to hold them, this still really could be just such a masterful platform. And again, that's not to discredit the amazing work people are already doing with this, because there are so many people doing really cool work with the iPad Pro and the iPad Mini, all the iPads. There's just so much more it could be. And so anyway, let's use the live loops mode, because I like the live loops mode. I like to start from scratch. I like to keep it empty. And this is where it can start to feel a little bit like Ableton, which I like. So let's find a plugin. And first, let's actually start with Alchemy, because I think Alchemy is underrated. And I will say GarageBand on the iPad is a lot better, in my opinion, than GarageBand on the iPhone, because you just get a lot more control over the synths in here. And something I really like about Alchemy is how you can drag between these different like preset variations of the plugins. Pretty cool. There's also a bunch of additional like sound packs now, right? If I go to Sound Library, there's just a bunch of free stuff. I remember, GarageBand used to cost money on the iPad, I believe, and then it used to cost money for some additional features, and now I'm pretty sure everything is free. Which is pretty cool. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure all the packs and stuff are free, which is rad. And that gives you more instrument sounds, more drum sounds, etc. So let's zoom out. GarageBand is a fairly basic DAW, but it is a full-blown DAW. You can create MIDI tracks that trigger plugins, either internal GarageBand plugins or external audio unit V3s. Inter-app audio, I believe you can still trigger. Could be wrong on that. Using this loops mode, this live loop mode, you can create clips and play them in different orders and build out songs and then record directly into a tracks mode, or you can just play directly into a more traditional linear DAW tracks mode. Areas where it doesn't feel like a full-blown DAW really come down to mixing. So if I hit this mixer button, right, in a lot of DAWs, you would see decibel levels. Let's see. Will it let me trigger notes at the same time? No. All right, let's just make a clip really quick. Okay, we're not recording right now. That's super weird. Yeah. All right. And it doesn't auto quantize. Okay, so this is what I wanted to talk about. We can see the volume here, how much sound, how much volume or gain or whatever is coming from this track as this little green bit of information. But what we don't see is decibel levels. And I am fairly positive, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, I am fairly certain there's no way to see decibel levels across this app. And to me, that is why GarageBand is like a light DAW or a beginner DAW. Not because you can't make awesome sounds with it, but because it is hiding vital information from you that would just make it a little bit more pro. That said, I do think there's enough here to be the bedrock of a really great music app, and there's probably an argument that Logic on the iPad doesn't have to be a port of the desktop UI Mac OS Logic, but instead could be an expanded, more pro version of GarageBand as the base. That said, this is a really old app. I've been using a version of Logic that was really similar to this since like 2015 at least. And so I do think it would be cool to just see what their team could do if they from the ground up created a touch-based Logic Pro that was very stable. That's the reason I keep saying I want Logic to come to iPad, not just because I want the plugins and the features, which would be cool, but because I want the stability that would hopefully come from a first-party app and the support that would come from a first-party app. One of the other problems with iPad Music is that the entire ecosystem is very cheap. And that might not sound like a problem if you're a consumer, and it certainly was awesome for me when I started, because you can buy all these apps for like $10, $5, $20, even the really expensive ones tend to be about $50, which is expensive, but in the world of desktop music production is actually fairly cheap. The reason this is a con is because it does seem like it's kind of unsustainable for these developers to try to make apps and then support them across all the different DAWs. And the DAWs aren't super supported because they're also pretty cheap, and it just feels like no one has the resources necessary, besides Apple, to make plugins and DAWs that are truly stable, to make an ecosystem that's stable. It does seem like maybe not enough people who could pay enough money who would want to use the apps as they currently exist. So it feels like a chicken and egg problem to me, where you have this awesome hardware and this really good user interface and clearly a pretty solid backend of Audio Unit v3, a huge ecosystem of developers and users, and yet there's still all of these stability issues more than a decade down the line from iPad music production starting. And that to me really just comes down to these incentives, right? If a company like Ableton or Native Instruments or Akai or any of these companies felt like there were enough people who would pay good money to run solid, substantial software on these devices, I think they would make it. But what a lot of these companies have done is made little baby cut down simple versions of their apps and then been probably a little disappointed that not everyone wanted to jump to the simple apps when they want real DAWs. Again, I could just be making this up, but it really does seem like a chicken and the egg problem. And that's why I think Logic needs to come to the iPad still, because I think Apple needs to show the entire community that if they made a really powerful DAW that was stable and solid, and maybe incentivized companies like Arturia, Native Instruments, Akai to bring their plugins over as Audio Unit v3s onto iPad, I think they could really show how much more this can be. And again, that is not to say there aren't amazing apps on here, that there aren't amazing music production, like both producers and software and hardware and all of that. It's just that this could be so much more. The power under the hood here, you could easily imagine just plugging in a Machine Mark III, putting your headphones into the machine, and just having all of the same sounds that you would have had on a MacBook Air 5-6 years ago running better here. And the fact you can't do that is just such a bummer because it seems so doable and it's just not there. And I know it's not easy to just write new software, and I know it's not as simple as drag and drop from Mac OS to iPad, and I know you have to do a touch interface and all of that, but I hope we see a version of this in the future where people are designing apps for both platforms with touch in mind, even if the Mac doesn't have touch right now and maybe never will. Okay, that's a lot of ranting. That's kind of how I feel about the iPad. That's kind of why I bought the iPad, because I want to play with it. I want to do more stuff with it. I'm excited about the future. But as always, you should only buy hardware, software, etc. for what it is today. So let's look at what this can do today, and specifically GarageBand. So I think if I want to delete the clip, I have to hit the little edit button and delete. My advice to Apple would be let that be a tap and hold. And if it is a tap and hold for an existing clip, then I did it wrong. But everything should be tap and hold. Okay, good. Yeah, so let's delete that. Let's load up an audio unit, because I have quite a few. And one of the big lessons I've learned in iPad music production is if you start to see crashes regularly from a specific audio unit, you can't trust it, don't use it anymore. But there are some apps on here I think I can trust. Continua, Animoog, Agonizer, Apparillo. Those have all been pretty good. Apps I don't trust, sadly, AudioKit. Even though AudioKit seems like a really cool company, I see more crashes from AudioKit apps, especially as audio units, than any other app. BeatHawk has major stability issues as well. Lagrange is good. All of the, I forget this guy's name. He does Caspar, Magellan, a few other ones. Those are all super stable. Xeon has always been stable for me. Synthmaster 2 was always stable. Yeah, let's play with Synthmaster 2, because this is one of the best examples of like a full-blown desktop level VST or audio unit that's available for iPad. Whoa. God, that sounds good. All right. And forgive me, it's been a little while since I've used a lot of these apps. Like I said, I gave up on iPad, but I'm back, baby. These are fun. And I like that Synthmaster kind of tells you what type of preset you're going to see with the first initials. Gosh, that's really loud. All right. I would also really love to see someone create a hardware keyboard that was able to browse and go through all of these from the get-go. Some of my favorite hardware is like this one, the Complete M32, which Native Instruments was kind enough to send to me. When you're using this in a DAW on Mac or PC, you can load up Complete Control. You can do a bunch of DAW control and browse through presets just with this keyboard. And there, to my knowledge, there really isn't anything quite like that on an iPad yet. But I think that goes back to the chicken and the egg problem. These basses are cool, but let's get some like pads or something. Here's something I will say. Early on, when I was getting really frustrated with iPads a few years ago, I had this assumption that all the sounds on iPad were worse, and I think that's not true. I didn't have a fundamental understanding of like sound design, and I still am a baby at sound design. But the more I learn, the more there really is some amazing sounding plugins here. It's not really a sound issue. For me, iPad is more of a stability issue and mildly a capability issue. But let's look at a counter argument to that, right? So right now we're using a synth and we have master effects in GarageBand, but we also have plugin effects, and there's 4 slots here. So let's find an example of a plugin that's super powerful. For example, I have the FabFilter bundle because there was a time in 2019 where I thought I was going to do all of my production on an iPad. So now we have Pro Q3 right here. This is a desktop level VST. And I'm not doing anything super amazing with it. We could cut out all the low end here. And this is giving us that decibel level information I was talking about. But that's more in relation to what we're cutting. How do I adjust the Q? Is there a shortcut for that? How do I... Yeah, that's interesting. Someone probably knows. I don't know. But yeah, we can turn the Pro Q off. We have additional slots here, built-in and audio unit effects, so we could throw black hole reverb on here. That sounds super lush, right? And so again, I don't want to imply that there aren't super capable, powerful apps on here. It's mostly just that when I got really into creating like full-blown tracks, I would encounter issues. Let's load Cubasis so I can show you what I'm talking about. Cubasis 3. I think this auto loads into your... Yeah, let's do the most recent. So I made this really basic little loop, but what I was noticing is that first note here in Animoog Z was not playing. Let's see if it'll play this time. Yeah, it is. Okay, nice. There it is. No reason at all to not do that, but it just didn't. This is 3 tracks of MIDI. This is a pretty stable plugin. This is Blease Alpha, or yeah, Blease. I don't know. But the Blease apps are pretty good. Blease, tell me how to pronounce that in the comments. These are all pretty solid apps. You might be able to make an argument against Continua, but I wouldn't. I think Kaya Rice and I believe Jakob Hack was super involved in Continua. He has a bunch of presets in it anyway. These are all pretty solid iPad apps, and we're still seeing that issue. That to me is Cubasis, and I am not here for Cubasis apologists who will tell me I'm making stuff up when 3 tracks in a tiny little loop already has an error. Unacceptable. Anyway, back to the stable law. All right, so let's just get a few things going here so I can make something really quick. Let's do some drums from the iPad, and this is where those packs are pretty cool. Oh, I don't want drummers though. It's cool that you can get drummers, but I don't really want drummers. Oh gosh. Okay, no. Here we go. Let's try After Party. Oh, that's cool. I actually don't love that. Try Analog Architecture. It would be cool, and I don't think this has this, but it would be really cool if this app had the sampler from Logic as well. The really like basic make drum synths and one-shot synths out of samples, or not drum synths, but rather drum kits and different one-shot kits or instruments out of samples would be really sick, and I don't think this has a native sampler. There's plugins, but again, a stable built-in sampler would be sick. I don't think this can quantize by default. I could be wrong. Let's see, MIDI Bluetooth multi-track recording, time signature, time ruler, tempo. Let's tap tempo. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So now if I tap and hold, it just stops it and then triggers, and you have to go to this edit. I kind of get it. It's like performance or whatever, but still. All right, quantization is on because it's a drum track, right? Let's get a new instrument. Let's get another audio unit. Korg Module Pro is now an audio unit. It's been an audio unit for a while, but I love this app. I'm so glad it's an audio unit. Shout out to Korg. This mic stand right here is a little annoying for keyboard. That works. Let's try that. Whoops. Should have a pretty simple undo. There we go. Nice. All right, and that should be not quantized by default. Edit, settings, quantization, multiple. Interesting, but off, yeah. Oh no, oh weird. Okay, maybe it is on now. Maybe I was wrong, that's fine. Okay. The strings, I feel like, are actually pretty decent in GarageBand. They're not like mind-blowing, but they're fine. Let's add some effects. Put our reverb at the end. Black hole. Do I have another reverb I like? Tone boosters reverb, maybe? I don't know. Let's do black hole. Black hole's good. This could be an instance where instead of these strings, actually, I think I will use, let's see. So it's tap. I'll use Module Pro again because I have some pretty nice strings there, I think. I also have a separate strings app that's okay. I think I bought a strings pack. Yeah. That's the Triton pack. This is, I think, actual strings. Oh wow, that's beautiful. Oh wow, I love that. There's a little quirk though. I hit stop twice, which stops all the loops, and I hate that. I really hate it. Don't stop all the loops. But also put this over here, and I can't move it until I hit edit. And anyway, I just don't think it's a very intuitively designed app. That's a whole different argument. Here we go. Got your live effects here. Anyway, I didn't really go too deep into actually building something here, but hopefully this was insightful or worthwhile. Hopefully app developers, and specifically Apple, like I really hope they push this to the next level. Give us just a few more pro features. We need more stability in audio units. We need a more stable audio unit backend platform for this thing. Listen to people like Jakob Hack and other pro users for what is super necessary and what is going on, because there's definitely stuff I don't know. But from a top level, I would love to see major players really putting their best stuff on the iPad, at least the iPad Pro, anything with an M1 chip that can handle it or higher. It's time. Let's get the V Collection. Let's get Play Series. Complete Control. Complete. Let's do it. Come on. I hope we see that. Anyway, thank you for watching. Consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much to everyone who's done that already. And thank you to my Patreon patrons. I have gear linked in the description if you do want to buy stuff. Those links help me, and they're at no cost to you. Anyway, have a great week. I'll see you soon. Bye.